Welcome to the Brutally Honest podcast. I'm your host, Kathryn Ducey. Thanks for being here. Thanks for choosing to delight in this episode. I got to tell you, something that I know that I do is when I'm interested in listening to a podcast, I'll choose whatever show it is and I'll go through the list of topics or the subjects for each of their episodes, and I'll wait for my body to give me feedback, for it to say, uh-huh or uh-uh. Maybe some of you do this too. And I'm always very intrigued as to which episode it lands on. Sometimes I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But sometimes I'm like, that doesn't make sense, but I'm going to listen anyway, right? And actually, that ties in beautifully to the topic of this episode, which is presence. Okay, presence is a word that I think many of us talk about. We talk about presence. It's definitely a topic that is, woven into the spiritual world and meditation, into personal development, the work that I do with all of my clients as a life coach and as a somatically trained life coach. But I often find that people have maybe like slightly different definitions, and that it's important to define and give context for what it is in my work and the work that I do with my clients, and also the work that I do on myself. So presence itself for me is through the body. So how I help people understand presence is through their body. I work with my clients, they'll come to me and they'll spot challenging situations or circumstances, right, outside of their body. Could be with a boss, could be with a mother-in-law, could be with their audience, on Instagram or YouTube, could be with their lover, could be with their children, right? So they'll come to me and they'll have a challenging situation with someone. And most people think that the situation is challenging because of the other person, right? Oh, it's because of them. And then what I do is I work with the client to understand that it's never about the other person. It's about something inside of them. And by something, I mean a feeling that is arising as it relates to that person. And that feeling that is arising is a feeling that my client decided in childhood, likely it's in childhood, that they decided that that feeling is bad. And now they do everything they can to avoid that feeling. And when they're in that place of avoiding, they're no longer present. They're no longer in the here and now. They're no longer able to see this moment for what it is, right? Now they're bringing a whole bunch of their stuff into the situation. And that is dictating how it's all going. And all that stuff is living in their unconscious, okay? They're not even aware of it. And we cannot be upset with people or shame people for that for which they are unaware of, right? Or that for that which they are oblivious to. That's just unfair. And why do I say that? Because I have lived a very unconscious life myself, and I have taken a lot of strange actions and justified a lot of things in my life and caused myself and other people, a bunch of different pain along the way, that now in the position where I'm in, looking back, I can say, holy geez, I had no idea. And that is how that works. And I still have moments like this all the time, especially in my romantic partnership with my dreamy guy, Michael, and with our 2 kiddos. So it's happening all the time. What I do is I support my clients to see that the goal is presence, which means, can you be with whatever is arising in your body in the moment as life is unfolding around you? So prime example, let's say a client has a mother-in-law, and this particular mother-in-law, just it irks her, right? Kind of annoys her. She often has these thoughts that she feels judged. She feels criticized by her mother-in-law all the time. And she'll come to me and she'll say, I really just don't know what's up with my mother-in-law. Like, she's kind of the worst, right? Can you help me with this? And I'll say, well, of course I can. Yeah, like, let's take a look, right? So what we'll do is we'll set up the container where I have my client recreate the moment where they feel that like irritation, right? Whatever that is. And what I'll have my client do is I'll ask her, okay, so walk me through the moments leading up to the feelings of frustration or irritation for you, right? And she'll say, okay, well, I got a text and the text itself just felt really cold. It felt like she was mothering me. I feel like a child. And I'll say, okay, boom, pause there. What did you feel in your body when that was happening? Right? What were the feelings you were having? I might even go a little bit deeper depending on the level that this client is at in terms of this kind of work. So I might even say, what were the sensations you were having in your body in that moment when you read that text? And, the thought was, oh, she's like belittling me, right? Like, I feel like I'm her child. I feel like she's dominating me or whatever it is. And so I'll say, like, what were the sensations in your body? And the client might say, oh, geez, I felt a lot of tension. Okay, great. You felt some tension. And was there any sort of other feelings that were coming up? What do you think when she is mothering you? Why do you think that is? Well, I've probably done something that's disappointing. I've been a disappointment. Whew. Pause. Great. You're doing awesome. Tell me about disappointing others. My client will say, I don't like doing that. I don't like disappointing others. Interesting. Okay. Why not? Well, I feel like I've failed. I feel like I'm doing something wrong. Oh, interesting. Failure. That's another one, right? Tell me about failure. When's the last time you allowed yourself just to experience the sensation of failure in your body and have some compassion for it and allow it to just like complete its cycle in your body? Well, most of my clients will say, I don't know if I've really ever done that. And then, yeah, can you teach me how to do that? So I teach presence as it relates to the body and allowing yourself to be your whole self, your whole human self, right? All your expression of emotions that are coming up in any given moment and just being aware of them and giving yourself permission to feel them without escaping them, without having to fix them, change them, without judging them and shaming them. This is way easier said than done because the majority of us as children, and this goes back to your childhood, the majority of us received some sort of, feedback in the environment that some of our feelings were bad, or received some sort of information that you don't want to feel that feeling. Okay. And then we decided, okay, well, moving forward, I will not feel that feeling. And for women, it's anger, it's rage, it's jealousy, it's desires, it's pleasure. Those are two huge ones for me. It's sadness. And what ends up happening is then unconsciously, you're constantly trying to avoid those feelings as an adult, even though those are incredibly beautiful and valuable emotions and happen daily because they're supposed to, because it's biologically correct. But what happens is the fear of experiencing those feelings has you constantly controlling your life, has you numbing out, escaping drugs, alcohol, food, your work, constantly keeping the house clean. That's one of mine. And unfortunately, it gets in between you and having a life that you desire. And we don't want that. We don't want that. So I'll give you an example of my life and where I'm going through working with being with some of the feelings that I decided as a kiddo were really bad. And what it does is it impacts my connection with my kiddos. And this was like really eye-opening for me. So one of the things that I have noticed is that my kids, they like a lot of closeness. They like hugs a lot. When there's sort of like this rupture or there's some big emotions or, something just feels off, the kids' natural instinct is to get close to me or their dad. Okay, they want to hold me or they want us to hold them. And for me, this has been one of my greatest fears in life. And I didn't realize it consciously until I had kids. This has been unconscious for me. One of my biggest fears is touch, people touching, getting close, love, desire. These are some of the things that come up for me that I fear and that I will reject, even if the circumstances today are all safe. Everyone's safe. These kids are very safe, right? In fact, what they're doing is more helpful than my strategies of working through, discomfort and working through rupture, right? One of my greatest strategies that served me for a while and no longer serves me is I go right into my head. I get right into my head and I want to work through things through talking. All right. And I could easily pass this on to my kids and teach them that as well. That was taught to me. The children are teaching me the rawest and probably best way to move through rupture and awkwardness and anxiousness and all that kind of stuff, which is, let's just get close, right? Let's co-regulate, The child's going to pass that energy on to me. And then as the mom, I'm going to ground that into the ground by, maybe having my feet firmly planted into the floor and imagining, that energy just coming to me and going through me into my feet and into the floor. That's a whole other exercise I do with my clients. So for me, it was really eye-opening because the children would want to get close to me when there was any sort of discomfort or, they were sad about something or they were mad about something or they felt like they disappointed one of us or, they were just feeling off. And for me, that was like a hell no. And so I started to get really present to what was happening because I started to trace that this was a pattern of mine. The more present you are, the more you start to trace these patterns. Like, wait a minute, I don't only do that with kids, but like I've done that with girlfriends. Like they're like, can I hug you? And I'm like, I don't know. I can trace this back to childhood. I remember, being a kiddo at camp under the age of 10. And some of the girls in my cabin, they loved to lie, with their heads in each other's laps or in our counselor's lap. And maybe someone's caressing their hair or doing something like that. And I remember getting really tense. And I thought that was just the way it was, right? That's just who I am. I'm just not a person who likes to get close. But what was really happening was I had an unconscious belief that that type of intimacy is bad, that it leads to something bad. Rejection, for me, it was punishment. I tended to be punished a lot physically for my behavior. And, I grew up in the early 80s and there was a lot of unique ways of believing that you should raise a child. And one of those was you break the child's will, right? And corporal punishment. That was a big thing for me and for many people, right? And we didn't even realize at the time what that was doing. And I have forgiven my caretakers and my parents for a lot of this. I don't even know if I would say forgiven is the right word because you can't forgive someone for something they've done that they were completely oblivious to. So it's more of we've had great conversations and they've been able to, see some things they couldn't see at the time. And they have apologized. So, but I can remember back to very, very early days where I would feel this tension in my body around seeing others touch physically. And that continued into, high school, girlfriends. Girls love to like get silly, lie on each other, tickle each other. Like girls just do that stuff. I don't know, dudes don't do that. But I saw that like my girlfriends were all doing that. And I would just quietly observe and sort of decline the invitation. People would definitely try to get close to me, but I was like, no, thanks. It's fine. I don't really engage in that type of play. Play was another thing. Play is definitely a feeling in my body that I decided was bad. There was not a lot of play in my childhood. There was a lot of being an adult, very young. Okay. So I would have these urges to be playful. I'd have these urges for closeness, right? Intimacy, affection. Affection is a big one. And those advances from me were declined, right? They were rejected. So I definitely unconsciously decided that those things are bad. And play is bad in particular. And now, having kids and watching them just be in their in their unbridled play, right, brings up a lot of feelings for me. And how I know that is because I continue to be present with all of the contracting and the resistance in my body as I'm observing the children play. And working towards moving through that, right, which is very vulnerable for me. Being present also requires a level of welcoming and vulnerability because basically you are saying, it's okay to actually feel these feelings that I have told myself were bad for my whole life. And it is actually okay to feel play in my body. Or it's okay to feel the shame that comes up in my body when I observe the children playing. I will not die. See, as a kid, we thought we were going to die when that was happening because we wouldn't know otherwise. We were so young. Okay. So it did feel like death. We also didn't know if those feelings would ever go away. And that makes a lot of sense too, because how they went away was either we would get soothed, which wasn't always happening, was it? Especially in my experience, that wasn't happening. So those feelings for me probably went on for a while. These urges like sadness and anger and rage and jealousy, they probably went on for a while, or there was some sort of external punishment for them. And I just decided, okay, well, these are very bad, very scary. So sometimes when the children want to hug me, what I'm now present to is my childlike self worries, well, when is this going to stop? When is whatever they're doing going to stop? I have this fear that it's never going to go away. Some men feel this way around women's emotions. It's just like, okay, I get that she's sad, but like, when's she going to stop? Or some of my clients have this fear of, if I start crying, I'll never stop. And so my work is helping them get present to these feelings, right, through the body. This is somatic work, right? And allowing them to have these beautiful experiences of not dying as they go through the full cycle. That's really where, as a parent, that's the best thing you can do for your kid, right? The best thing you can do for anybody, but especially your children, is when they're feeling a feeling, is say, oh my gosh, you're really sad. That's okay. Yeah, you are meant to be sad about, your friends at school not inviting you to that party. Or you're meant to feel angry about that little boy taking your toy. That's okay. That's the best thing you can do for your kid. And in fact, the best thing you can do for a friend or an adult or your client, right? I don't give advice to my clients. I support them. I create this safety where their emotions are absolutely welcome, where there's nothing to fix. It's all good. And the more you do that work, the more you become present to your emotional body, the more you start to be able to tolerate more. This increases your tolerance. And the less you're now living in fight flight all the time, which has been my my experience since I was a kiddo. My Lord, it's amazing how much I didn't know I was living in fight flight until the kids came into my life. And I've designed my life, unconsciously, where I can take a lot of breaks because I'm so used to just being tense all the time and always needing to have these barriers up and these walls up to protect myself. It's just because I haven't felt safe, right? I just don't feel safe very often. And then kids come into your life and it's 24/7. It's constant where something is up for them naturally. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't have these walls up all the time. This is like it's too much. I also yearn for connection, and I have a beautiful job here that I want to fulfill on. And children learn a lot of this from their mother, right? Affection from their mom is really, really important. And they're also observing how their mom, works through her emotions, that there are some beautiful lessons there that especially girls will take away. Okay. So I've got an incredible job here, which I take very seriously, but I'm also making tons of mistakes. It has been such a roller coaster ride for me, which it is for everybody. I mean, emotions themselves are like being on a roller coaster ride. And the more we honor that is just the cycle, right? Sometimes you wake up and you're like, oh, I'm just in such a mood. I don't really want to do today. I don't like today. And then the next day you can wake up and you're like, oh my God, life is so great. I'm really killing it. Things are good. Well, that's how emotions work. It's almost laughable if you can become present to, okay, I feel this sort of weight today when I woke up. And I know that if I allow this to just be here, I just name it, like, oh, I feel scared. Most of us aren't even aware that we've got a bunch of fears about stuff in our life. And the more present you are, the more truthful you are about whatever's going on, right? So for me, it has been like taxes. I'm afraid of tax season that's looming. And I might even start thinking about that January 1st. I've had an interesting dynamic with money in my life. I've abused money, okay, as a way to punish myself for my desires that I have in life, right? That's a whole other podcast episode. Oof, we can get into that another time, which I will. So some of the teachings that are really important for me when it comes to myself, but also my clients, is that this too shall pass. That is really important. Okay. Especially as a mother, because I often realize that I've got this like agenda for how things are going to go. So we might be out all day with the kids and we're having a great time, and we're kind of not spoiling them, but we're just like not saying no to stuff. We're like, yeah, of course you can have that candy, and of course we can do that, or of course we should go see that thing. And then we'll get home and I'll have this expectation that we're going to come home and everyone's going to be hunky-dory. We're going to like smoothly transition into dinner and then into bedtime. And then they're going to go to bed. And then dad and I are going to have some time together. And then I'm going to get a good night's sleep. Okay. And then as soon as we get home, someone has a freaking meltdown. And I'm like, wait, what? How is this happening? Like, didn't we meet all of your needs today? How do you need more? And one of the things that I've had to get present to is that in my body, when I have an emotion, it doesn't last forever. So that I can see into my children and I can be reminded when they have a feeling, when they have like let's say a temper tantrum, right? Or they're feeling tired, it's not going to last forever. Things are going to be different later or tomorrow. And that my only job is to simply be meeting life in the now. What's happening now? What do they need now? Not, oh, I thought we satisfied all their needs, so they shouldn't need anything right now. And then to resist them, which is something that I definitely have observed that I do and was kind of like surprised by. I was like, really? Of all people, This is why I want you guys to hear this stuff, because so many of you who are my clients have said, oh, I've really regressed. And I'm like, no, you haven't. There's no regression. There is no regression. You just are experiencing life in the moment. And this could be a new experience for you, even though you think it's an old experience. And it's like, okay, well, this is divine timing. I must have to go through this process. I must have to go through this again, right? That's fine. Reminder too, how long have you been repressing this stuff, right? For me, it's been decades. I'll be 44 this year, right? So you have to give yourself a lot of compassion because you've been living from this unconscious place and fearing all these feelings for your whole life, the majority of us, right? And then this experience comes along in your mid to late 30s, right? And you're like, oh, I should be able to, I don't know what you want to call it, transcend this. I should be able to feel these feelings no problem now because of all this work that I've done. No, that's not how that works, right? So we have to have some compassion for ourselves, right? Now we want to also not give ourselves too many outs, right? And I think that's what it comes really down to is, are you willing to be present? Right? Be vulnerable. You might still experience the resistance of the kid hugging you, but can you be vulnerable, let's say with your partner, and say, I'm noticing that anytime the kids want to connect with me and they want affection, I'm still contracting and closing up a little bit. Oh, and I feel for myself. I feel for them. Rather than going in your head and shaming yourself and being like, see, I did it again. I'm so the worst. I shouldn't be doing this anymore. I should have figured this out by now. No. That's not what we do. We invite vulnerability and truth and honesty. I'm doing my best right now. And I see I'm still contracting around affection. I still want to push it away. I don't trust it. I don't like it. And when I say the little kid in me doesn't. We also want to be mindful of who we're talking about. It's the little kid inside of you. It's not the adult you who doesn't like it. The adult you desires it, and rightfully so. It's your birthright for affection and closeness. The little kid inside of you, unfortunately, has the wheel at that moment. So I always ensure that the language, we clean up some of the language with my clients, because everything is created in language, right? And language carries energy. It's casting spells all the time on us and on the people around us, and it's something that we might be unconscious to. So it's really important that we start to take a look at expressing things in a way that is more helpful for us and for others, right? And we're taking radical responsibility with our words, with how we're talking to ourselves and talking to other people. That also can really help with cultivating a deeper presence in the moment, okay? I'm radically responsible for what's happening in this moment. So that is really the journey of becoming a more present adult. And all of this is the work that I do with my clients. I started my life coaching practice. It's close to a decade now. I think it's about 8 years. And I'll be honest, at first I was living completely in my head with my clients. And a lot of the work was transcending your thoughts, But what I've seen over time, especially in my own life, is do not trust your mind, right? To mind its way out of your problems, because a lot of your stuff starts in your mind anyway. So it's really tricky to use your mind as a way to solve your stuff. So I did not know that in the beginning of my work. And a lot of the work that I did with my clients was very heady. And I can admit that, I can own that. And then as the years went on and I started working with my own coaches who were actually somatically trained, and then I went through my life coaching certification in early 2020-21, a lot of that work was revealing yourself and allowing whatever experience was coming up to just be present. If you had, fear of expressing this thing, or you had any like self-doubt, or you had any whatever it was, the whole training I got was through the body and through revealing your most vulnerable parts, right? And then just being with that feeling or those feelings in your body without dying. And that was groundbreaking for me. But I'll tell you something, that was a 9-month process, and it was one of the coolest experiences of my life. Also one of the most challenging. That school brought up everything for me. But after that, I kind of dropped helping people feel their feelings because I still wasn't convinced. Meaning I still didn't like it because I personally did not like feeling my feelings. I still, struggle might not be the right word. I still resisted. I still fear a lot of feelings. And I'm working on that every day. And that's the gift of children. They're just like feeling machines. And you can't get away from it. Okay. So given the opportunity to not feel, I will absolutely take that. But you can't run from your kiddos, which is like the biggest blessing. And I think it's designed that way by God intentionally. So thank you, God. Anyway, so I've brought a lot more of this back into my practice, especially in the last year, but, in the last like 3 to 4 years as I've gone through a divorce and, went through a lot of stuff. And I was just like, I'm just going to feel my way through this. I took out alcohol for about 1.5 years. I was single, celibate, and sober. I mean, talk about my biggest distractions: men, booze, and sex. Those are the 3 ways that I escaped. There were some other ones in there too, but I took those out and I just felt, and I was very present post-divorce. Okay. So I hope you got something amazing out of this for you. I'm really excited to hear. You're welcome to send me a DM at Kathryn Ducey over on Instagram or leave a comment. And hey, if you think this episode will help someone else, please share it with them. That means a lot to me. I'm very passionate about this work, as you can hear. And it means something to me if you share this with someone and that one other person gets something. This is some of the most important work I think we'll ever do in our lives. And I've seen a lot, and I've seen the impacts that this work can have. Okay. Yeah, please do that. And if you feel called, please also leave a review. If it's 5 stars, great, or whatever you feel comfortable with. That helps this show get into Spotify's algorithm or, Apple Podcasts or algorithm, and it helps it get pushed out, right? Only if you feel called though. Okay. All right. I love you. I hope you're having a wonderful day, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. And I will talk to you soon.